Into the equation here. So what are the challenges? I think it kind of starts with data architecture, that right now we're measuring online ads performance on e-commerce, but the offline piece, the data architecture for retailers is often different. So I think that a lot of retailers have been undergoing a process to improve and align those systems, and then being able to pull it into measurement. Now the thing that I often hear is how quickly that offline sales data gets pulled back in. So, ultimately you want to see it be real time or near real time, but there's often a delay in being able to get that data back and action on it. And then lastly, in CPG, you often hear about incrementality, especially when it comes to offline sales. You could potentially see an ad and then have a lot of sales that are influenced by that ad, but it's not necessarily purchases that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So incrementality is a really key piece there. And I think there's a lot of innovation happening on that front, but certainly a question that needs to be solved for brands.
Elizabeth, you on the agency side, what is kind of your POV on this?
I like how I have to follow Andrew and that very solid answer. If I were to go for the short version, it's cash. It's cash and then free will, right? So people going into the store and those behaviors that they produce in the store, whether or not that's like throwing something in someone else's cart. I can't tell you how many Gen Zers I talked to that still use their parents' like loyalty numbers for things. But they don't live there anymore, and they haven't lived there, for 10 years, whatever it might be. But those are a couple big of the, I would say more of the ancillary things. But like as Andrew said, it's the architecture, it's the speed, and free will. It's people doing people things.
Yeah, I'll do a quick build on that. And at the end of the day, the lack of standards that exist right now, as so many new entrants have come into retail media with very disparate capability, and to your point, both Andrew and Elizabeth, many of which have lack of connectivity to a household, and some of which also have lack of activity to the in-store component. It's a real challenge for brands to be able to drive and their agency partners, right, to be able to compare apples to apples and understand the performant nature. From a Kroger perspective, of course, we're fortunate to have a deep relationship and a consistent relationship with our shoppers, where 96% of our sales are tethered to a household. That's online and in-store sales, and that affords us this unique opportunity to Andrew's exact point, close the loop in a really clear, really sharp, really accurate way, and understand true incrementality versus just organic, associated and attributed sales. And so everybody's in a little bit of a different space because their strategies are a little bit different as retailers at the end of the day. What we need to do in this industry, as the impact and influence and opportunity of first party data influences media at scale as content and commerce converge, is to set the right standards and set consistent standards, set the bar, and set the bar high, because everybody needs to be coming in and delivering on minimum viable expectations. And so, partly why we're so excited about the work that the IAB is doing, and Jeffrey, you're connected right in the mix of it and driving that change, is around making sure we establish those practices, establish those standards. So it's needed. It's needed because in absence of that, there's going to be confusion. There's going to be there's going to be frustration, and so the faster we can get down that path, the better we'll be for customers, for brands, for advertising, publishers off property as well. So look forward to the journey and making meaningful change in 23.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I think there's definitely frustration from the brand side. We'd love to kind of, I guess, Kara, would love to kind of get a glimpse in kind of what the current measurement solutions that Kroger is using to tie in that online activity to in-store sales, and how are you guys using various different data sources to do that?
Yeah, the heart of the capability creation gets down to the fact that we have a 20+ year relationship with customers through a loyalty program. So that's the connectivity of exposure through log files, right, into understanding did behavior change from customers. And at the end of the day, brands are looking to engage, inspire, move volume. And that is a critical component to make sure that we've got that right connective tissue end to end. So our loyalty program works because there's a value equation, right, and a value exchange with our shoppers. And then as we work through the analytics side, of course, we've got to be really sharp on the measurement standards, the capabilities, the techniques, from setting up, your kind of test and control audience, exposed and unexposed, the different methodologies that can sit underneath for synthetic controls, and working through the dynamics to understand true business impact at scale. The days of mixed models being, the kind of exclusive purview into, performant nature of media and investment planning are kind of eroding. The days of MTA being the saving, grace are eroding, right, as cookies deprecate. There's kind of a new lens that needs to come forward, and we're in the midst of doing research on that ourselves, on how do we move beyond what we see as best in class standards, right, tethered to households and understanding true incrementality, to also recognize standards will continue to evolve as appropriate regulations continue to evolve with log data across publishers, and the changes that Apple can moves forward with, adjust some of the practices as well. So that's the heart of where our starting point is, but it does get into data clarity, the integrity, the architecture, the measurement sciences that sit on top of that. And of course, in CPG, we certainly know that we have great purchase frequency that comes forward too. And so we have the ability to be mindful of those attribution windows and to associate the impact in the right way.
Ellen, you kind of sit and you're trying to solve this for various retailers. So what are the solutions Trade Desk is having in helping retailers kind of solve for this across, making sure they're interoperable as well, which is kind of a big priority as well?
Yeah, I mean, the great news is, as we're thinking about these measurement solutions and bringing that offline data in, the retailers truly are the source of that data. So like Kara mentioned with Kroger, sometimes that's based on loyalty data, sometimes that's based on credit card data, and the retailers are leveraging an identity to kind of bring that together to be able to attribute it. But at the Trade Desk, we're integrated with a variety of retailers to bring this measurement in platforms so that advertisers have the option to kind of leverage different measurement solutions from different retailers depending on their campaign goals, or maybe where the most volume is coming from their sales, or in some cases measure across multiple retailers so they can kind of understand the impact and performance of, from a variety of different retailer outcomes. And the great part is that activity is coming in daily sometimes, so that campaigns can not only be using that data to understand the campaign performance at the end of the campaign, but also to inform in-platform or in-campaign optimizations, which is really just the dream, if you will. I mean, even just a few years ago, that wasn't a possibility. You'd be waiting, always weeks after to kind of understand performance. And at least from a ROAS perspective, we've really gotten to the point where we can do that daily. From an incrementality perspective, we have room to grow there to make that faster and more granular than it is today. But I think we'll get there, and we have a really great North Star that we're working towards.
That's amazing to hear. When we talk about retail media, obviously the conversation of first-party data always comes to mind, but not all first-party data is created equal. What should brands be looking for when considering in-store media or activities as it relates to the quality of the audience as they may begin purchasing? Elizabeth, you kind of oversee a lot of really innovative brands within the retail space. Kind of what is your POV here?
It's definitely that. It's not like all first-party data is created equal. We like to say that. We put it in one big bucket. We're like, look, we have 1P, and you're like, yeah, okay. But look within that is how is that 1P data collected? Is it collected through through a loyalty program? Is it collected through other, volunteer activities? As far as I go, is it not collected? So for example, like Ulta does a wonderful job of, engaging their loyalty program at different levels, and, diamond and platinum and all this. They have separate retailer moments or events that allow them to understand like who's coming and when, and like what is it that motivates them in terms of either a promotion or a sale or a feature or new launch. And then obviously you've got like Kroger. We have a habit when it comes to Kroger. You put your phone number in, and you want to talk about a persistent identifier over time. It's going to be the phone number. It's not email. It's the phone number, because you will bequeath that to your children if you have to. Like, you'll hold on to that for 20 years. So yes, I would say that's a big thing to look for, is like, how is it collected, and then how can you slice it up, right? So is it all just like one big, in-market audience? Is it by category, or are you actually going to be able to go after certain behaviorals? Like, has the retailer gotten to the point where they are able to segment and offer you the information in a way in which you can access it in the way that you want to access it?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I think, starting point for the conversation is data integrity, right? I think a big advantage that Kroger has had is that 96% loyalty card adoption, whereas in other formats, there's a lot more cash transaction. But to me, it's really about kind of the depth of data and the frequency of purchases. So I always say that, the future of retail media goes through CPG and grocery. I don't say that because it's necessarily always the most profitable channel. I think it serves all these other retail segments very well too, but it's because of the data that exists. And I think that this is where we're going to see the cutting edge of everything in measurement, whether that's learning about incrementality, and learning how the data can actually help you understand the customer better. That depth and richness of the information helps you understand who they are and how you can target them in other, once you're outside of the site, upper funnel formats in the open web, in streaming TV. Like, these are the big opportunities that I'm thinking a lot about. So Kroger, for example, very high depth of information. People are purchasing on a regular basis, primarily within grocery and CPG, right? You have other retailers that cut across categories, so they may be able to have, a really rich profile of that person and the life stage that they're in. So that affords other opportunities. So I think, a lot of retailers are going to have very specific advantages. And I would say they should know well what their advantage is and lean into that. But not every retailer has the best first-party data for every instance.
Talking to kind of like the power of first-party data and kind of like what we can do with that, as we think about ROAS and how it's calculated right now, most of it's just using e-commerce sales. And, Andrew, in a lot of your amazing research, you pointed that a lot of these sales are actually, more sales happen in store. How does providing, that online media attribution to in-store sales help change how ROAS is being calculated and the way brands should be investing in retail media? Ellen, I know we were talking a few days about this, but kind of love to kind of dive into like how, the trade desk is looking to solve this.
Yeah, I mean, I think prior to being able to bring in that offline conversion data, most, especially national or brand advertisers, were really looking at more upper funnel metrics for understanding performance. So looking at reach or frequency or brand lift. And to be clear, those are all still very viable options today. But now they can take that a step further if they want to connect those campaigns to actual real world sales. And use ROAS as a KPI in order to get closer to that ultimate objective of driving more sales for their brands, growing their brands overall. In one area I find this to be especially exciting is when you think about the traditional upper funnel metrics that you would typically have used on channels like CTV, for example. We've gotten to this point now where CTV, for example, is an authenticated data source, or everyone has to log in order to watch connected television. And then you have this retail data that is oftentimes based in that same authentication or can be matched to that same authentication. And so the fidelity of that measurement is really strong. And so coupling that opportunity to measure sales on such a premium kind of channel is really exciting for brands. And I think that's going to be a huge area of opportunity that we'll see quickly evolve. Now that this offline data is available for brands to use to make decisions on.
Yeah, Ellen, I love the highlights that you're sharing there. I mean, and as a bridge, Andrew, on some of your highlights too, data is the core ingredient. And what it comes down to then is the science and the technology, the connective tissue that builds on top of that, right? That is what's critical. And this is a really important opportunity to take the industry forward beyond the traditional media metrics that don't all have a direct correlation into business impact, which is ultimately what marketers are focused on, right? And what agencies on behalf of marketers are focused on. We need to help turn the corner here. We have a unique opportunity to do so, obviously, as the addressability continues to extend into new channels. As we think about online and then online and offline together, there will be points in time when different people based on their roles may be curious about online only. But that's going to be a slice of just looking at what some kind of e-commerce manager may be interested in, right? That's the world that they operate in. That's what they're tethered against. That's what their goals are. For the vast majority of individuals, they're going to be harnessing a much wider purview about total sales, right? Any brand manager that's in there, anybody that's connected to the total book of business, any financial talent is looking at share impact. They're looking at sales incrementality. They're looking at household penetration gains. That's what we're seeing in CTV. The most priority KPI that brands are anchoring against is around driving net incremental households into the category and into the brand. And then they're looking at sales acceleration as a secondary. But these are all opportunities for us. And as we think about the extension into where the role that digital will continue to influence in-store sales. I think Forrester is predicting that with 70% of U.S. Retail sales will be digitally influenced in the next handful of years. I think by 2027, there is a role that digital will play to influence behavior that still happens in brick and mortar, and that's why it's so important that we tether the two together and make sure we're providing full end-to-end visibility in what is the customer impact. Because many shoppers for omni retail. That we have, an online business and an ability to walk into brick and mortar, the vast majority of shoppers are omni customers. And so when you separate that, you're losing the fidelity, Ellen, great word, real fidelity of what that true business impact is.
I guess kind of thinking about the fidelity data and kind of like getting that holistic view and maybe being a little provocative here. Andrew, do you think the industry requires a multi-retailer sales lift solution to really measure these national campaigns for brands?
Long term, yes. And so let me put on my retailer hat for a second. If I'm a retailer, perfect world, right? I scale my retail media network and I'm a huge walled garden and every brand that I want to be playing with is playing ball. That's a great position to be in. But what can happen is that the dollars that move into the retail media network might just come from shopper and trade dollars. And really, if I'm a retailer, I want incremental dollars coming from national budgets, right? So that should be the conversation that everyone's aligned around. How do you do that? I think you need to, I would actually argue for like old school audience measurement starting to speak to what's happening in the stores, or ad campaigns as they happen across platforms. So you need kind of traditional research to understand ad and campaign delivery, tie that to outcomes, and then those outcomes, you want to have a full sort of national view of that. And so what that does argue for is a Nielsen IQ, an IRI, Catalina, to play a role of having that multi-retailer sales lift solution. I don't think it's one or the other. I think the reality is you will be running campaigns, you'll be getting, data back from the retailer themselves and have that closed loop analysis, and you can optimize that in real time. As a national brand, though, you're also going to want to be able to have some cadence and visibility into what's happening across all retailers that you're making these sorts of buys across. It also argues for standardization, on the different formats and things of that nature, but you need a certain level of standardization on sales lift measurement as well.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Andrew just shared there. I think, is a multi-retailer measurement solution required? No, but we should and we will get there, is how I like to think about it. I think to your point, Andrew, the brand and national dollars are going to demand this. And so if retail media networks want to get into that space, we're going to have to figure out a solution to kind of give them that oversight, because ultimately they don't, brand and national dollars probably don't really care where the sale is happening. They just care that the sale happened, which is a very different kind of perspective on retail media than a shopper budget has, where they're looking to drive stores or sales at specific stores. And one thing I want to just say too is that the reality is that, offline attribution has been available in market through those partners, like Andrew mentioned, like the IRIs and Nielsen's or Catalinas of the world. That's available, but what's new in the marketplace today is being able to see that offline attribution by retailer, so that you can understand a little bit more impact. And what I think is really great for the retailers about this is measurement and performance is what's going to drive advertisers to use their data, right? So it's that flywheel. And so if they can actually see that, they are driving sales at certain stores or seeing the performance of that retailer's data, that's going to drive more and more spend to that specific retailer. And so, regardless, I think that's kind of the way I see things going, is towards this space where it's not as much a blinded measurement and more specific to the retailer, but eventually still making it so you can kind of decision across those various retailers. Again, we're going to get to that point, even if today we're still making strides in that direction.
What would you say is the current state of real-time sales attribution for in-store, and what is it today versus what should be or what we're striving toward, and how are brands working it now, and how should they be preparing to deliver that performance in the future?
Yeah, I mean, at the trade desk, we're working with a variety of retailers, like I mentioned previously, to bring in daily on offline attribution into our platform. And to be clear, that's ROAS, right? Which maybe isn't the ultimate metric that everyone is wanting to get. And so depending on that kind of attribution window, whether it's 14 days or 30 days, that data kind of evolves over time and eventually stabilizes for use. But clients, again, have that data in their hands. And I think we were talking about this the other day a little bit, while it may not be the metric that, tells you incrementality or overall performance, there's unique ways that clients can start to use that data when they think about growing their brands. Maybe when they get some of these tactics around, let's say, conquesting or category audience activation, ROAS can be an interesting metrics to help understand what is the performance I'm driving of people who aren't traditionally buying my product. And so there's almost this like scalpel approach to how we can be using ROAS in market in the absence of having true incrementality that everyone can leverage in campaign immediately and with consistency across the board. So, within our campaign, we're seeing brands today leveraging that daily ROAS data to make optimizations, and even better, our in-platform AI is actually making those decisions for brands so that, they're optimizing to the KPIs that they've kind of indicated in the platform. that they, need to hit for their specific brands and goals.
Yeah, that's really well said, Ellen. I think the work that that the trade desk is engaged with different retail partners, and same for Kroger. There's a handful of us, and they're larger national retailers like Kroger and others that have daily in-store sales that's available, in-store and online, right? Omni sales that's coming through in the brands, and their agency partners have the ability for that connectivity to optimize. But this is where there is varied levels of sophistication and readiness and maturity across the board. So back to setting standards, making sure that there's clearer lines and clearer understanding about the capability assets that are available today, and then the use cases of how that unlocks from from the buy side, right? From the hands-on keys traders, so they can be influencing and optimizing. That's the power of how this comes together to make a real impact for brands, to make a real impact for customers. It's about relevance. It's about making sure that we're exposing those ads to the people that are going to engage, have the highest likelihood to engage. It's about inspiring in that way, because ads aren't going to go away, but we can absolutely reduce the clutter. And the work that we've done, we've looked at the data to say we can absolutely deploy fewer impressions, 51% fewer impressions, in fact, over the last cases that we've done to deliver the same sales impact. Now that's around optimizing the audience target up front. That's around optimizing the flights when you're in the midst of campaigns that are deploying. So really excited about the continued evolution here, really excited about continuing to drive and lead the industry, because that's going to help make everybody better.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, last question. What is everyone most excited about when it comes to measurement and retail media for 2023?
I'll go first. We're going to break out of ROAS jail. We're going to go up the funnel. We're getting out of ROAS jail. I'm here for it. I'm climbing the fence. Let's go.
All right. Yes, I'm down for it.
I'm really excited right now about in-store retail media and bringing an audience measurement framework to that context. It's going to require some innovation, some evolution using location-based data, and it's going to be imperfect, as most of these measurement initiatives are. But I think that you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We have to keep evolving the conversation so that the metrics are there for everyone, whether they're performance marketers or national brand advertisers, to be able to understand the space and invest in it in a way that makes sense. And we'll keep evolving it and getting it better over time.
I love that. I agree. And it's not going to be perfect to start, but I think brands that are leaning in, testing with these solutions, giving feedback to retailers and partners alike, they have to be doing that if they want to have influence over where the direction of things go. So I think the thing that I'm most excited about, I'm really excited to see brands start to use retail measurement across more than just to understand how retail data is performing. How are other tactics performing, data tactics or channels, or kind of broadening the use of retail data beyond just kind of what we think as retail media to additional kind of campaign tactics, and using, again, that as a driver within their kind of performance reporting.
I'm excited to lift the industry up in the right way. We have got to move forward beyond traditional media metrics. Attention measurement is not the answer. At the end of the day, brand marketers care about business impact. We care about connecting with the right people that makes a difference and drives volume and inspires them in the right way. And I'm excited about this elevation, visibility, new standards that can be leveraged for the industry to get better. And ultimately, when we do the right thing, customers ultimately reap the benefits of it. They're engaging in content that matters to them. So it's going to be a great 2023, and let's get on with it together. Let's drive change. Let's elevate standards.
Yes, I second that 100%. Well, everyone, thank you so much for taking time today. Hope all our listeners got a lot from it. I certainly did. This was an awesome conversation, and just keep following what we're doing here at the IB and these thought leaders who are, driving this conversation in the industry as well. Bye.
Thanks for having us, Jeffrey.
Thank you.